Sup YouTube, Raptor here, and welcome to this strategy guide for how to consistently beat Vanduul Swarm for a pilot of average skill. I'm going to be replaying an example of myself completing this mode in Star Citizen's Arena Commander and giving a basic guide on how to make it through all the waves, as I say, with consistency being the main goal. Now, this is primarily for those that want to unlock the Vanduul Glaive either to buy with rec or with real money, as RSI seem to allow us to do a couple of times a year on a limited run basis. I'm going to start off by saying this guide is intended for the average pilot because I feel I am an average pilot. I don't totally suck at the game, at the same time I'm not god tier, and therefore you're going to see a few mistakes during the playthrough, which of course I'll try and point out as we go along. And after all, we're still learning here. If you feel that statement doesn't apply to you, then my friend, please be my guest and make a video and link it in the comments to help me improve my skills with the HOTAS. That being said, I'm going to be flying the default Sabre with one loadout change and using the HOTAS profile that I showed in my controls guide for new players, which you can find on my channel. I think the only change I made since that video to the control setup was I had an S-curve on the roll axis and I switched out the IFCS toggle for a straight up ESP off and on toggle, which will disable all your ship's sort of flight enhancements. One side note on a mistake I think I made from that video too is if you want to go to pre-flight mode in 2.6, as far as I'm aware, the only way to do that is to deploy your landing gear. But be that as it may, it's a discussion for another time. So, going to be flying with one random pub of what I consider average skill on this one, which is why I chose this particular replay. And if possible, I would recommend trying to get into a game with only one other player in there with you, unless you're with a group of friends and you know what they're going to do, as there's less chance of you being overrun by a large number of enemies at any given point and having to re-attempt. Now, he ends up getting a higher score than me by a small margin, as you'll see at the end if you make it through to the end, but there's a really good example essentially of some of the points I want to bring up in this tutorial about players that jump in and want to take all the wreck for themselves, which if you've played Vanduul Swarm then you'll know what I'm talking about here. Not to sort of blame the guy, but you see it all too often. As I said at the very start, we're going to try and beat this mode here and train for the PU, where of course we won't be getting extra lives as you do in Arena Commander. It's not all about stealing kills as fast as possible, it's not about being random though, it's about consistency being the key. In fact, it's the current goal of mine right now to complete both Vanduul and Pirate Swarm in Arena Commander without losing a single life, but so far in 2.6 every time I always seem to lose at least one or two ships, so working towards that one. There's room for improvement with my piloting skill, as you'll see in this video. So, as for the ship itself, it's completely stock loadout, except I did swap the front size 2 gimbaled lasers, which come as standard with the ship, out for some size 3 Panther repeaters, as they do more damage, and I don't use gimbals anyway with the HOTAS. Aside from that, in terms of the setup, I'd recommend doing what I did here at the start, and that's every time you start the game or respawn, you want to boost the side and rear ships' shields, which will come at the expense of the front shields. And to do this, you press 4, 6 and 2 on the numpad respectively. If you want to rebalance the shields back to default anytime, you can just press 5 and it will put it back to an even configuration. Lastly, for the setup, and this is real personal preference, is that I always enable look ahead mode every time I fly, so that the targeting reticule is locked in position but you still get the movement reticule. And I'll highlight on the screen here the movement reticule. It's pretty important to be able to focus on this movement, in my opinion, as you sometimes are not too sure about how much strafe you can have on your movement, the angle that you're travelling at any time, but if you look at the movement reticule, it's giving you a clear representation, so you should always be aware of your ship's current trajectory. Now, I'm not going to be talking across this entire video on this one, I'll be jumping in and out just to point out the recommendations as we go along, and I'll put some visual cues on screen and some timestamps in the comments. So, first point here, and you noticed I just grabbed a fuel pickup which replenished 25% of my fuel and allows us to use the Afterburners. Now, the Afterburner, it's a key resource in the game as of patch 2.6, and the changes to the flight module that came with that. It allows us to choose basically when to engage the enemy and to quickly get out of trouble if needs be. Now in the Sabre, you can see how much afterburn you have left on the top left bar of the HUD. The boost pickup is the blue jerry can looking icon, which all destroyed enemies will drop in Arena Commander. Note that these drops don't happen at all in the real persistent universe, only in Arena Commander, which is sort of considered a sim or a game within a game, if you will. It's also worth mentioning that these drops will disappear after a short period of time. Now, there are only two requirements to having Afterburn available to us. Number one is that we have enough fuel to use it, and number two is that the ship hasn't taken some kind of damage to the Afterburner, which can happen, and it will leave you without Afterburner until you are able to pick up a repair drop or until you respawn. Other thing to note right off the bat is the flight modes I have selected, and for the most part I won't be changing these at all in the Sabre during the entire run, although I do like to play around with them sometimes. First one's coupled mode. I usually leave this on with the exception of a few occasional manoeuvres here and there. G-safe, second, you probably want to leave this on 100% of the time, so it doesn't let you black out when you're doing a sharp turn. Third one's com stab, which kind of is personal preference in a way, but it stabilises your movements and it leaves you less likely to overshoot a turn and crash into an asteroid. Last one is ESP, which is kind of the entire stabilisation of your ship. Try turning it off in a free flight game just to get an idea of what I'm talking about here and what's going on, but it's basically making your controls way more sensitive if you turn it off, and the whole thing's hard to control in my opinion. Next point here, which is absolutely key to fighting NPC ships in my opinion, is match target speed. You'll see me do this a lot in this video, and the time to do this normally is when you're fighting a single Vanduul, or in some occasions two Vanduul, and you feel you can get the kill quickly. Make sure you have this bound somewhere easy to toggle. Basically, with this on, you'll travel at the exact same speed as your target at all times, which means you can stay right on his tail without overshooting him whatsoever. Now, what the AI will tend to do in Vanduul Swarm, if it's being attacked, is they will usually drop speed instead of trying to speed away from you, and then they'll attempt to outmaneuver you at a relatively low velocity. This, of course, means that if match target speed is on, you become a sitting duck yourself for any other ships in the area. So the golden rule is to use this a lot, but if the heats are coming, it's not the kill at all costs, it's get the kill when it's safe to do so. The main goal should always be to protect the hull of your ship when you're fighting in the Vanduul Swarm, in my opinion. If you want to make it all the way, it's a marathon, not a sprint. When you have the kill, you'll either need to retoggle the command, or you'll need to make a slight adjustment to your main throttle, which usually means just gunning it to max and then following up with Afterburn to get to a safe distance and then plan your next attack from there.
Proximity alert. Head. Proximity alert. Starboard. Proximity alert overhead. Proximity alert. Head. Proximity alert. Deck. Proximity alert.
So with boss ships such as the Priest here, they're not normally too tricky, but the pain comes, as with others, when you're surrounded by a supporting group of other fighters. If you do see them isolated, as we saw here with the Priest, you should always try and take them out as quickly as possible as your main target. It's not normally necessary to use missiles against them, although you can if you want, as the bosses will drop extra drops compared to the grunt ships, which normally includes extra missiles and a repair drop. Again, plan your attack, get close, match target speed, blast it all to hell, then collect what you need and plan your next target. Another good example of the match target speed here for this last ship, which again allows me to come in hot but still maintain control of the target. You'll notice also through the run that I use a lot of lateral strafe, which I think is a good habit to be in, because not only are you picking an angle and then forcing your target to maneuver in a way that isn't necessarily best for him, but it's always going to buy you an extra few seconds in case you do come under fire, as you become a much harder target to hit if you have some kind of strafe or roll or combination of the two going on at all times. As we go into wave 7 then, this is an example of a really nice spawn for me, allowing me to pick off the first two ships one at a time, and then deciding from there how to engage the remainders. So with this group of 3, I locked down one with the missile, which I think was probably overkill in hindsight, but at the same time I didn't want to risk the possibility of getting shot by 3 ships at once. He in the end turns his direction and heads off in another way. If you do have a group of ships, this is the best time to use missiles, by the way, as the AI will react to avoid it, and so they'll usually split up a bit, allowing you to pick a second ship off. Good tactic here is to quickly fire a missile on the first ship, then switch to another ship and either missile again, then switch, or open fire the repeaters, depending on how many enemies are actually in the cluster. Still on the early waves here, so nothing too tricky with only 2 players in the game, although at this point if you do have more than 2, you might find the numbers starting to get a bit out of hand and difficult to manage, depending on what your teammates are doing. Quick reiteration to the point about strafing here. You'll see I get 2 ships in quick succession. If you note my movement indicator on the second one, that's basically an 80 to 90% strafe to the right I'm applying here. And you'll see that with match target speed, I'm pretty much hammering his starboard shield non-stop, and there's nothing you can do. Instant mincemeat.
Contacts remaining. Contact. Elite units en route.
Contact. Contact. Contact.
So another lucky spawn with the boss ship there. If you notice, I start with my back to the boundary, which is a good position to be in, as you can normally get a kill or 2 pretty easily. It's worth noting that when I was approaching that boundary, I had to use the space brake, as with comp stab off or without using the brake, there was a chance I could have drifted out of bounds and lost a respawn. With this next one though, I fly up to him, match target speed, but he's getting close to the terraformer here, so I'm forced to give up on the kill just to be on the safe side. Also noticed the missile drops ahead, so Afterburners try and pick that up, but yeah, good example of being unfortunate with the timing as it despawns just before I can get there.
Shields recharging. Shields.
So on this wave, I'm at the edge of the map where I want to be. You'll see me basically park up while I decide on who to engage, and I see this close spawn off to the right, which I decide is probably the best option. Deal with him in about average time, but he has a friend wearing down my shields, which I noticed, so I decide to pull out after the kill, but actually end up taking hull damage, which isn't good. We're in an area with a lot of obstacles here, which I tend to like in general, but if comm stab is off, it's easy to drift into an asteroid, which depending on your shield level will either outright kill you or you'll bounce off and take damage and spin, which can leave you looking like a bit of a turkey. Always keep a constant eye on where your shields are at the bottom left there, in this case of the HUD, and if they're low, take your time, burn away, pick another target while they regenerate back up to full health.
Zero hostile contacts remaining. Warning, there are multiple hostiles inbound.
Contact.
So death number one, still not 100% sure what killed me here. Either I hit an asteroid which I didn't see for some reason, or more likely the shields on my underside, or the underside of the ship, were taking fire with the deck shield being down or low, which is pretty hard to tell from the HUD. I'd say either way, bad positioning there from me, as there was an enemy ship coming at me from the deck side, and that is the worst place to be taking fire from, especially when you already have taken hull damage as I had in that situation. What I should have done was boost out a bit more until I was sure to be clear, and then re-engage from there.
Zero hostile contacts remaining. Contact. Elite units en route. Elite units eliminated. Warning. There are multiple hostiles inbound.
So on this one, I noticed my teammate is going after the two targets closest to me on the left, so I decided to move up to the other side of the map. Probably not the best idea in hindsight, but I did get away with it. You see me try a decouple turn here to come in close to the terraformer, as I want to be on the tail of the three ships in the centre of the map. Unfortunately for me, ship number 4 is coming in behind me once I've committed, so I just do some damage and decide it's not worth it, and then I have to reposition. Looking back on this, I think I would have just been best off taking the edge of the map at the start, secure a kill on ship number 4, and then worry about those central 3 targets after he is dead.
Proximity alert aft. Proximity alert deck.
Zero hostile contact. Warning. There are multiple hostiles inbound.
Contact. Contact. Kill.
Missile here just because my teammate seems to be in trouble and I want to take some of the heat off him. In the end he kills the one that I targeted, which is a bit unfortunate. I do need to keep my teammate alive for at least a few more waves to make my own life easier. And you probably noticed from when I checked the scoreboard earlier, he's already died 4 times, so just doing the classic pub move there that you'll see a lot of players do, where it's just trying to get as many kills as fast as possible without really caring about how many ships he's fighting at once. For the most part, I'd say the maximum ships you can be fighting at once is 2 or 3, or else you're running a big risk of losing a life, unless you're a pro of course, you may be able to fight more. He has 4 guys surrounding him in this battle, which is just leaving him exposed. So in the end I jump in and help out, so it's 2 and 2 and we clean out the wave with no problem.
Contact. Contact.
Quick thing to note about the AI here is if you're fighting head on, they'll almost always try and turn and bait you into a slow chase instead of jousting you. Here though my aim's really bad and I lose my front and rear shields because they take too much time, so I end up ducking behind a rock just to limit my exposure, and I pick off the guy that's tailing me.
Proximity alert head. Kill. Proximity alert head.
Elite units
Kill.
eliminated.
Proximity alert. Deck.
Warning. There are multiple hostiles inbound.
So I did just want to go over my setup for targeting quickly, and I recommend you follow this or do something similar yourself. So I dedicate a 4-way hat on my joystick purely for targeting enemies. I also do have a pin target bound, but I don't really use it at all in this run, and really all you need is the 4 hat commands to get by. So hat up targets whatever's directly ahead of me, hat left and right is forward and back cycle through hostiles, and hat back is target nearest hostile. So in this fight they're all spread out, and I cruise into the centre of the map to try and draw some attention and then dart back out to the boundary to try and take a pick, or at least that was the plan. Didn't quite work, as instead of following me they mostly went after my teammate, so maybe should have done a bit more damage to anger the AI into a chase. You'll notice the bug here where even though there's no missile targeting me, it's still giving me the icon. And this has been an issue for a long time now, so you sort of get used to it, but can still be confusing. It should obviously get patched out sooner or later by CIG. So yeah, here I make the decision to take the repair while it's available instead of helping my teammate. Bit cowardly, I know, but at this point I'm not really too bothered about him, as he seems to have no fear anyway, and my main goal is just to finish the map, which I normally can do solo as long as I've got at least one respawn. It will always be quicker with a wingman still alive, so it is nice to help people out where you can. So, died again here, which was a complete misplay by me, totally out of position, as I was going in to help my wingman far too late in the fight. I'm going for the guy on the edge, but as my teammate dies, which was always going to happen, they turn and they focus me, and I'm moving at match target speed, which is a snail's pace, so it's lights out. Always recommend going for the rocket pickups here, as my teammate is down 6 men, so it's likely that I'll be on my own for a while, and the rockets are extremely useful for splitting up a tough group of enemies. Yeah, as mentioned before, if you're fighting for it once, chances are you'll be dead within seconds, unless you're flying evasive maneuvers, so grab the pickups, take space, take time, and pick your moment.
Hostile contacts remaining. Warning. There are multiple hostiles inbound.
Contact. Contact. Contact.
Rockets again here to split up the pack as they're chasing down my wingman. Incidentally, apologies for the sound issues in this next part of the tape. Not exactly sure what was causing this, as it doesn't usually happen. But there we go, alpha is alpha, it is what it is.
Proximity alert. Starboard.
Kaboom!
Shields recharging.
I think it was around this point that I realised my teammate had lost his last respawn. So a bit of fancy flying here, going in reverse, as I realised I had full front shields, and well, I didn't rebalance them towards the back on the last respawn, so they're going to last a bit longer. It's sometimes nice if you can do this, as the AI doesn't really expect you to fly in reverse. All you do is cut the throttle to 0, hit the back thrusters, and keep switching target to the nearest hostile, just to try and judge the range. I would recommend having a look behind button set if you are going to do this, and just check your rear view at least once every time you change direction. You saw me do it briefly there. You also need to be ready to spin around and get out of trouble if a lot of them get up close, as when that front shield finally drops, you will be a sitting duck. As you saw there though, I backpedaled for far too long and paid the price, especially as the missile didn't kill anything. That might have been okay if a few had died to missiles. On to the last life then, and this is where you need patience. If you make one mistake at this point, that's it, you're making a new lobby. But take your time, try and bait them behind the rocks, use missiles, do whatever you can, and eventually you should be able to pick them off one at a time and clear the wave.
Proximity alert. Starboard. Proximity alert. Deck. Shields recharging. Shields up.
Just to state the obvious a little bit at this point, I am shooting at the targets a lot of times while they're still out of range, but I find this to be the safest way to play when flying solo especially, as you get that audio cue the second the target goes live. Remember, the thing to avoid at all costs is allowing multiple enemies to get a clean shot off on you at the same time. Your shields will melt, and before you know it, there goes your hull.
Proximity alert. Deck. Shields recharging. Proximity alert. Head. Proximity alert overhead. Proximity alert aft. Proximity alert. Head shield under fire. Rear shield under fire. Port shield under fire. Proximity alert. Head. Proximity alert port. Proximity alert aft. Shields recharging. Shield Shields recharging.
Brief example coming up here of a skidded roll, which is a maneuver that if you're watching closely you'll see me use quite frequently. It's a great little evasive maneuver which you can use to shake off missiles, or if you really want to be fancy you can even do it when flying in reverse. Basically you want about a half measure on your roll axis and around a 3/4 measure on one of your strafe axis, as well as moving forwards, and you'll get this lovely spiraling motion. You can sort of tweak it as you go as well by adding or subtracting roll to tighten or loosen the spiral.
Proximity alert. Head. Proximity alert overhead. Proximity alert aft. Proximity alert deck. Proximity alert. Head. Kill. Friendly target. Shields recharging. Shields
So there we go, a bit of cat and mouse, and that's 6 dead Vanduul. On to the last wave then. Nothing really special to note here, except if you get a group of 3 or 4 of the boss characters together in a bunch, you really don't want to be taking that fight if you can help it. They pack a lot bigger punch with missiles, heavy cannons, and they're tougher to kill. It takes longer, so you really need to split them up a little bit if you're on your own. I got groups of 2 for the most part, which is pretty good. But you still want to be careful and just not make any mistakes. There's no time limit, so just take the fight on your terms. Keep an eye on the shields. Try and grab those rockets and repairs if they drop. And yeah, as I said before, just wait for the best moment to take the fight.
Drop. Flare ready. Deck. Proximity alert. Starboard. Kill. Danger. System overheating. Shields recharging. Missile. Lock. Drop. Chaff. Drop. Flare. Ready. Chaff. Ready. Flare. Drop. Missile.
Elite units eliminated.
Kill. Proximity alert.
And there we have it. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you made it this far. Any comments on things I could do to improve would be welcomed for this one, or of course post a video reply if you managed to beat the swarm without losing a life. But yeah, hopefully if you were getting stuck with unlocking the glaive, this will give you some pointers for next time around. So subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me in the future, or add RPT in the game if you just want to say hi, and I'll see you in the verse.